Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. A very warm welcome. This is Monday, 7th November 2022 morning, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam discussion. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, entitled The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 4, Text 19. Before we discuss on this verse, let's sing Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Shri Radhe, Jai Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Shri Radhe, Jai Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Varirjakacharya Stottra Sadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय, मथुरा धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, मायापुर धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, सामवेद भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the simple devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the simple devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the simple devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu Krishne Matirastu. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 19. Saesha ātmātmavatām adhīśvaras trayīmayo dharmamayas tapomayaḥ gata-vyalīkair aja-śaṅkarādibhir vitarkya-liṅgo bhagavān prasīdatām. Saesha ātmātmavatām adhīśvaras trayīmayo dharmamayas tapomayaḥ gata-vyalīkair aja-śaṅkarādibhir vitarkya-liṅgo bhagavān prasīdatām. Saesha ātmātmavatām adhīśvaras trayīmayo dharmamayas tapomayaḥ gata-vyalīkair aja-śaṅkarādibhir vitarkya-liṅgo bhagavān prasīdatām. Synonyms: Saha, he; Eshaha, it is; Atma, the Supersoul; Ātmāvatāṃ, of the self-realized souls; adhīśvaras, the Supreme Lord; trayīmayo, personified Vedas; dharmamayas, personified religious scripture; tapomayaḥ, personified austerity; gata-vyalīkair, by those who are above all pretensions; aja-śaṅkarādibhir, by Lord Shiva and others; vitarkya-liṅgo, one who is observed with awe and veneration; bhagavān, the personality of Godhead; prasīdatām, be kind toward me. Translation: He is the Supersoul and the Supreme Lord of all self-realized souls. He is the personification of the Vedas, religious scriptures, and austerities. He is worshipped by Lord Brahmā and Śiva, and all those who are transcendental to all pretensions. Being so revered with awe and veneration, may that Supreme Absolute be pleased with me. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. The Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, although the Lord of all followers of different paths of self-realization, is knowable only by those who are above all pretensions. Everyone is searching for eternal peace or eternal life, and with an aim to this destination, everyone is either studying the Vedic scriptures or other scriptures, religious scriptures, or undergoing severe austerity as empiric philosophers, as mystic yogis, or as unalloyed devotees, etc. But the Supreme Lord is perfectly realized only by the devotees because they are above all pretensions. Those who are on the path of self-realization are generally classified as karmis, jnanis, yogis, or devotees of the Lord. The karmis, who are much attracted by the fruitive activities of the Vedic rituals, are called bhukti-kami, or those who desire material enjoyment. The jnanis, who try to become one with the Supreme by mental speculation, are called mukti-kami, or those who desire liberation from material existence. The mystic yogis, who practice different types of austerities for attainment of 8 kinds of material perfection and who ultimately meet the Supersoul Paramatma in trance, are called siddhi-kami, or those who desire the perfection of becoming finer than the finest, becoming heavier than the heaviest, getting everything desired, having control over everyone, creating everything liked, etc. All these are abilities of a powerful yogi. But the devotees of the Lord do not want anything like that for self satisfaction. They want only to serve the Lord because the Lord is great, and as living entities, they are eternally subordinate parts and parcels of the Lord. This perfect realization of the self by the devotee helps him to become desireless, to desire nothing for his personal self. And thus the devotees are called nishkami, without any desire. A living entity, by his constitutional position, cannot be void of all desires. The bhuktikami, muktikami, and siddhikami all desire something for personal satisfaction. But the nishkami devotees of the Lord desire everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. They are completely dependent on the orders of the Lord and are always ready to discharge their duty for the satisfaction of the Lord. In the beginning, Arjuna placed himself as one of those who desired self-satisfaction, for he desired not to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. But to make him desireless, the Lord preached the Bhagavad Gita, in which the ways of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, and also Bhakti Yoga were explained. Because Arjuna was without any pretension, he changed his decision and satisfied the Lord by agreeing to fight. Karishye vachanam tava. And thus he became desireless. The examples of Brahma and Lord Shiva are specifically cited here because Brahmaji, Lord Shiva, Srimati Lakshmiji, and the four Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanātana, etc., are leaders of the four desireless Vaishnava Sampradayas. They are all freed from all pretensions. Srila Jiva Goswami interprets the word gata-vyalīkair as projhita kaitavai, or those who are freed from all pretensions, the unalloyed devotees only. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, Madhya 19.149, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Teva Shanta, Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakali Ashanta. Those who are after fruitive results of their pious activities, those who desire salvation and identity with the Supreme, and those who desire material perfections of mystic power, are all restless because they want something for themselves, but the devotee is completely peaceful because he has no demand for himself and is always ready to serve the desire of the Lord. The conclusion is therefore that the Lord is for everyone, because no one can achieve the result of his respective desires without his sanction. But as stated by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 8.9, all such results are awarded by him only. For the Lord is adhīśvara, the original controller of everyone, namely the Vedantists, the great Karmakandiyas, the great religious leaders, the great performers of austerity, and all who are striving for spiritual advancement. But ultimately, he is realized by the pretensionless devotees only. Therefore, special stress is given to the devotional service of the Lord by Srila Shukadeva Goswami. Before we discuss on this verse, let us offer some prayers. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Shreshtham Manamapi Shachiputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Murupurim Mathurim Goshthavati Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Adadandastrinam Dante Idam Yachah Punah Punah Shriman Rupa Padambhojam Dhulisyam Janma Janmani He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 19. Saesha ātmātmavatām adhīśvaras trayīmayo dharmamayas tapomayaḥ gata-vyalīkair aja-śaṅkarādibhir vitarkya-liṅgo bhagavān prasīdatām. He is the Supersoul and the Supreme Lord of all self-realized souls. He is the personification of the Vedas, religious scriptures, and austerities. He is worshipped by Lord Brahmā and Śiva and all those who are transcendental to all pretensions. Being so revered with awe and veneration, may that Supreme Absolute be pleased with me. Bhagavān prasīdatām. This is the ending two words of this beautiful verse stated by Srila Shukadeva Goswami. So that is the goal of human form of life. Bhagavān prasīdatām. The personality of Godhead give the benediction of serving him. That is the only desire of a pure devotee of the Lord. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions in his Shikshashtakam, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam va jagadishakame, mama janmani janmani ishware bhavatat bhaktir ahaytuki tvai. This is the pure, loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where there is nothing asked for personal gratification. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that I don't want wealth, I don't want followers, I don't want a beautiful partner, I don't want fame, na jagadisha kame. Then what do you want, O devotee? Mama janmani janmani ishware. Birth after birth, let me have the costless, loving devotional service to you. Mama janmani janmani ishware bhavatat bhaktir ahaytuki tvai. So this is the costless, loving devotional service. That is what a pure devotee is after. And that is when Bhagavān prasīdatām. That is when the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes under the control of the devotee. The devotee actually never wants to do that. The devotee wants to be controlled by the Lord. There are only two options that are available to the living entity. One is to be controlled by the Lord or to be controlled by his energy. So when one is controlled by the Lord, they are directly controlled by the internal potency of the Lord. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrata udoyam nabhijanati mamebhya paramavyayam. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that he is not visible to everyone. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrata. So Krishna is covered by his internal potency. So because he is covered by his internal potency, not everyone is able to know him. So therefore, there is this beautiful verse where Srila Prabhupada generally quotes this. Ittam satam brahma sukhanubhutya dasya gatanam paradaivatena maya-shritanam naradarakena sadhyam vijahru krita punya punja. Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse many a times in his lectures and conversations and talks, where he says about how Krishna, when he's coming after pasturing the cows, he's coming back. Srila Shukadeva Goswami is describing that scene, and he's saying that here is a person who gives the Brahma Sukha to Satam. Itham Satam Brahma Sukhanubhutya. Anubhuti. So the impersonalists. So here Srila Prabhupada mentions about the Jnanis. So the Jnanis are after the Jnana Marga. What is Jnana Marga? It is the path of uh, knowledge. And what does the path of knowledge say? It says Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. That is Srila Shankaracharya's Advaita philosophy, where he says that the only truth is Brahman, and this material world is an illusion. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. So this when someone is in the Jnana Marga, one is unfortunately disregarding the transcendental personality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because in the Jnana Marga, what is being stated is that when the Supreme Lord is incarnating, he is incarnating with a material body, which is in the Vaishnava Siddhanta, it is considered Kaivalyam Narakayate, Tridashapur Akasha Pushpayate, Durdantendriya Kala Sarvapatali Protkata Damshrayate, Vishwam Purna Sukhayate, Yat Karunya Vaibhavatam Tam Gaura Evastuma. So this is by Prakashananda Saraswati. He is saying that for the devotee, the Kaivalya, that is this merging with the Brahman, is like a hell. Kaivalyam Narakayate. So this is the in the Jnana Marga, everything is considered as mithya except Brahman, and the Brahman is considered to be something that is impersonal. But then Krishna says, Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukhasya ikantikasya cha. Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that the Brahman is existing on him. Brahmano hi pratishtha aham. So it is resting on him. Brahman is resting on him. Amritasya avyayasya cha. What is Brahman? It is Amrita. Because when one knows one is Brahman, one knows Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, na shochati na kamshati, samah sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. So that is Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that when one knows one's original constitutional position as an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is Vaishnava Siddhanta, eternal part and mama eva amsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. And what is the impersonal or Advaita Siddhanta? It is that there is impersonal, that everything is one, and that one is impersonal. That is, so there is this that is the Jnani. So Srila Prabhupada mentions about Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakale Ashanta Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ateva Shanta. So Srila Prabhupada quotes that verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we are talking about Jnanis here. Bhukti Mukti Kami. So Jnanis are Mukti Kami. So they want liberation. They want to become merged in the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. So that is the desire of Jnanis. The desire of Karmis is Bhukti, sense gratification. Because in the Karma Kanda, or in the philosophy of Karmis, the main goal of life is to gratify the senses. And everything is based on one's understanding of one's existence. If understanding of one's existence is based on the existence of one's body, that the body is the only truth and there is nothing else, then the conclusion of such a person with such a perspective would be that I should satisfy my body to the most extent that is possible. So that is the Bhukti Kami. Then the Mukti kami are the impersonalists, and they are in the mode of their perspective is that uh, everything is illusion, and Brahman, the impersonal aspect, is the supreme. So then their goal is to get merged into that impersonal effulgence of the Lord. So they, so that is mukti. Mukti hitvanyatha rupam swarupena vyavasthitam. So this is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. What is real mukti? Mukti is giving up of the uh, unnatural state and being established in one's original constitutional position. That is liberation. So real liberation. So what is one's original constitutional position? Mama eva amsha jivaloke jiva bhuta sanatana. That is one's original constitutional position. That each and every living entity is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eternally, sanatana. Mama eva amsha jivaloke jiva bhuta sanatana. Then why? What is the reason that the living entities are struggling in this material universe? Manaha shashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that when there is identification with the mind and the five senses, and mind is called the sixth sense in that verse, Manaha shashtani indriyani, immediately there is prakriti sthani karshati. There is a struggle in this material universe. When one identifies oneself with the mind and the five senses, then there is struggle in the material universe. Otherwise, there is no struggle. Why there is no struggle? Because the Lord is present there. So here we see in this starting of this verse, it says Sha Esha Sa Esha ātmātmavatām adhīśvaras. So if we try and understand this, Sa Esha ātmātmavatām adhīśvaras. So if you look at the word by word here, he, it is, Atma is transliterated as the Supersoul, and ātmāvatām, of the self-realized souls. So this is the self-realized souls know the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the heart. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishta mattah smritir jnanam apohanam cha. So this is Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati. Brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani maya. So this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ishvara sarva bhutanam, of all the living entities. Where is he situated? Hriddeshe, in the heart of all the living entities. Tishtati. And what is happening? What is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani maya. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is present with the living entity in whatever birth the living entity is taking. So the living entity might be becoming a worm, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is still with that living entity. And the living entity might become Brahma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is still with the living entity. So it does not matter what birth the living entity is taken, but the Lord is always present with the living entity. And this is the costless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he never leaves the living entity. The living entity sometimes remembers and sometimes forgets the Lord, but the Lord never forgets the living entity. The Lord is personally present with the living entity at every moment. This is there is no. So this is why there is this Karuna Sindho. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho. We say Dina Bandho Jagatpate. The prayer that we say to Supreme Godhead Lord Shri Krishna, we call him, Hey Krishna, you are an ocean of mercy, Karuna Sindho, and Dina Bandho, you are the friend of the impoverished living entities. Impoverished is not in the material sense, because impoverishment in the material sense is temporary. Somebody could be impoverished at a certain point of time, but then the situation changes and person can become materially rich. That is temporary. But if there is impoverishment in terms of spiritual understanding, the spiritual existence, which is the natural existence of all the living entities, if there is impoverishment there, then that is unfortunately lasting lifetime after lifetime, unless there is this, again, a costless mercy Mahiyasham padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam vrinita yavat. Naisha matistavad kramangrim sparshati yad anartha pagamo yadartha. Mahiyasham padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam navranita yavat. So this is said by Srila Prahlad Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying that this attraction towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead, mati, na esham mati tava urukramangrim, towards the wonderful, loving lotus feet of the Lord. Uh, it does not happen automatically. Even though it is present inside all the living entities, that Naisha Matis, that attachment or attraction towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there within the heart of all the living entities. But because there is covering since time immemorial, that is not uh, being seen and that is not being acted upon. So, Mahi Yasham Pada Rajobhishekam. So, how does one actually understand one's original love attraction towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead when one is uh, serving and taking bath in the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotees of the Lord? So this is Mahi Yasham Pada Rajobhishekam Nishkinchananam na vrinita yavat. So this is the Nishkinchana. So Nishkinchana Namo Akinchana Vittaya Nivritta Guna Vrittaye Atma-ramaya Shantaya Kaivalyapataye Nama. This is said by Srimati Kunti Devi in her prayers. So Krishna is the wealth of the people who are not attached to the material wealth. So that is Akinchana Vittaya. So people, we might actually see, and we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita as well, that Pundarika Vidyanidhi was uh, he was staying in a place where it was considered to be a rich person, but then his mind was always attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this Akinchana Vittaya that Srimati Kunti Devi says is it's not externally impoverished per se. It is impoverished in the sense that there is no attachment to the material things. The material things might be present in the life of the person, but the person is not running after them. It is just present with the person. Uh, so there is a big difference between external impoverishment and internally not being attached to anything. So there could be a state where someone is externally impoverished, but they internally they have this lots and lots of desires in terms of accumulating a lot of material things. So that is sarva kama. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So it is said in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that even if one has many desires, one can have many desires, uh, or one does not have any desire at all. So this is the different. There are different categories of people. There could be one category of people who have no desires, and they are pure devotees of the Lord, because they do not. The only desire that they have is to serve the Lord. So Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ateva Shanta. So that Nishkama is towards one's own personal sense gratification, one's own personal satisfaction. So the real pure devotees of the Lord are Nishkama, and that is mentioned in the purport here by Srila Prabhupada. So he mentions here in the purport, a living entity by its constitutional position cannot be void of all desires. The Bhuktikami, Muktikami, and Siddhikami all desire something for personal satisfaction. So Bhuktikami are desiring sense gratification, and they are the karmis. The Muktikamis are desiring liberation, and they are the jnanis. And the Siddhikamis are desiring perfection, and they are the yogis. So, so there is karmis, jnanis, and yogis. And The Siddhikami, it is mentioned about the 8 kinds of siddhis, the 8 perfections that one attains when one is uh, going into the innermost meditative states. One gets a lot of powers through that meditative state, and that is called Ashta Siddhi, the 8 kinds of siddhis, which is Anima, Laghima, Mahima, Garima, Prapti, Prakamya, Ishitva, Vishitva. So Srila Prabhupada mentions here, uh, mentions in one of the sentences here. So the Siddhikami, or those who desire the perfection or becoming finer than the finest. So that is Anima, heavier than the heaviest, Laghima, getting everything desired, Prakamya, having control over everyone, Vashitva, creating everything light, Ishitva. So these are all the different powers that a yogi will get when they enter into that meditative state. Pure meditation for constantly for months, years. So when one gets into that state, one gets some supernatural powers. Uh, and the yogis sometimes they get under the control of these powers, because these powers are alluring in the conditioned state, uh, because one can just do things that are not normally possible for a normal human being. So with these powers, a person might become corrupt, and that is the point here in the. Uh, okay, before we go to the gata-vyalīkair, aja-śaṅkarādibhir. So there is this gata-vyalīkair, by those who are above all pretensions. So that is that word here, above all pretensions. So the devotees of the Lord do not have any other desire except to satisfy the Lord. This is the anyabhilashita shunyam, jnana karmadi anavritam, anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama. As Srila Rupa Goswami mentions that the real constitutional position which a pure devotee of the Lord goes into is anya abhilashita shunyam. There is no other desire. Every other desire is zero. Anya abhilashita shunyam. Then what else is the qualification? Jnana karmadi anavritam. One is not after the jnana marga, and one is not after the karma kanda. The karma kanda is basically doing the activities so that one gets promoted to the heavenly planets, and one gets lots of enjoyment in this material world while remaining in this material world. But in every situation, whether it is a karma kandi or a jnana kandi or a yogi, without bhakti, uh, everywhere this remaining in the material world is a point there. So that is a brahma bhona loka punaravartino arjuna mamupetyatu punarjanmam dukkhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gata. So as Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, that from the brahmaloka down to the all the other planetary systems that are existing, punar avartino arjuna. So there is a constant cycle of birth and death. So in the bhukti, mukti, and siddhi kami, in the karma kanda, jnana kanda, and the yogis, who are, if you want to say, they are in the yoga kanda part. So they are, unfortunately, if they are not in the state of bhakti. So when there is bhakti para isha anubhava viraktiranyatra syat esha tirsha ekakala prapadyamanasi yadashnutasyu tushti pushti kshudapaya anughasham. So this is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that so when there is bhakti, immediately there is para isha anubhava. There is experience of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is bhakti. And viraktiranyatra syat. So these three things happen simultaneously: the loving devotional service to the Lord, the experience of the Lord, and the detachment from everything that has no relationship, direct relationship with the Lord. So all these three things happen simultaneously. And the example that is given in that verse is, so this is when one surrenders, prapadyamanyasya. So when one is eating something, tushti pushti kshudapaya anughasham. So one is getting tushti, satisfaction, pushti, nourishment, and kshudapaya, freedom from hunger. When one is having food, these three things happen simultaneously. One gets satisfaction, one feels nourished, and one gets freedom from hunger. So similarly, when there is loving devotional service, the loving devotional service itself brings in the experience of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and detachment from everything that has got no relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is real loving devotional service. When the whole mind, the whole senses, the whole body, hridvag vapurbhir vidadhan namaste, jivetayu mukti pade sadaya bhak. So this is the heart, the speech, and the whole body. Hridvag vapurbhir. Jivetayo mukti pade sadaya bhak. So this is the real inheritor of tattenu kampam susamikshmano bhunjanam ev atmakritam vipakam hridvag vapurbhir vidadhan namaste jivetayo mukti pade sadhayava. So this is the wonderful statement in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So this is the state of the pure devotees of the Lord, that they consider everything as the costless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whatever be the situation could be materially favorable or materially unfavorable. Because at the end of the day, the whole existence in the material world is based on matter, on the experience of the body. And we are not in the situation where we are placing oneself within the consciousness to understand our original eternal nature. Very rarely are we in that state where we are detached from the experiences of the body. When we are actually detached from the experiences of the body and attached to the remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is our original state of existence. But very rarely does, in the conditioned state, the living entity reach that state where one is detached from the all these sensory perceptions that one gets. So the sensory perceptions is what is the basis of the material existence. But what is the basis of spiritual existence? The basis of spiritual existence is awareness, consciousness. And that consciousness or awareness is totally non-judgmental. It does not say that this is good and this is bad. So this is ichha dvesha samuddhena dvandva mohena bharata sarge yanti parantapa sarva bhutani sammoham sarge yanti parantapa. So this is what Krishna says, ichha dvesha samuddhena. So this is the material world, dvandva. So there is this duality in this material world, and this duality is based on our experiences that we had since time immemorial. So there is if the sensory perception is coming to me and I am feeling good with that sensory perception, that is ichha. So that means I want more of that sensory perception. And if some sensory perception is coming to me which I don't like, I am dvesha. I am running away from it. So this is the ichha dvesha samuddhena dvandva mohena bharata. So Krishna mentions this is the dvandva, the duality of this material world. And what is the duality based on? It is based on the sensory perception. So whatever my senses like, I'm attached to it. Whatever my senses don't like, I'm running away from it. But what is our original nature? Our original nature is based on the awareness, the consciousness, because it is the awareness and consciousness which is the basis of everything that we do. Uh, the living, the living entity, the living part in the entity is existing because there is awareness and consciousness. If there is no awareness and consciousness, the entity is not living; it's a dead entity. As Srila Prabhupada mentions a lot of time in his uh, purports and talks about living entity. So the living aspect is because there is awareness and consciousness. If the awareness and consciousness is gone, then it is a dead entity. It's not a living entity. And the dead entity is the body. The body is always a dead entity. Uh, Whatever changes are happening in the body is because of the presence of that living spark within the body. And that living spark is uh, that's what Krishna says. Dehi nosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantaram prapti dhiras tatrana muhyati. Because there is the proprietor of the body within the body. Dehi, within the body, asmin yatha dehe, there is this kaumaram yavanam jara. There is this childhood, youth, and old age. And tatha dehantaram prapti. So similarly, the living entity gives up the body. So dhiras tatrana muhyati. So Krishna says that a sober person does not get bewildered by these changes. So this is the original existence where we are totally in a conscious state without any judgment. So that is dvandvair vimukta. Sukha dukkha sangya gachyantya moda padam avyayam tat. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita what is the qualification of a devotee, a pure devotee of the Lord. That is nirmana moha. So that pure devotee of the Lord does not have any pride. Without any pride. Nirmana moha. Without any attachment. Jita sanga dosha. The next thing that Krishna mentions is jita sanga dosha. So sanga is the attachment to different things. So this pure devotee of the Lord has overcome these attachment. He has become victorious. Jita sanga dosha. So the dosha is the impurity. What is the impurity? The impurity is attachment to the material things. Matter is getting attracted to matter through the medium of the spirit. So what is matter? The body is matter. And what is it getting attracted to? Another thing that the body likes. So this is sanga dosha. So this is that attachment, the impurity of material attachment. So one becomes victorious over that. One is without pride, without attachment, and jita sanga dosha, adhyatma nitya. The third thing that Krishna mentions is that one is constantly engaged in understanding one's original constitutional position. That is adhyatma. Nitya, constantly. Adhyatma nitya, vinivritta kama. With no passion for material accumulation. That is vinivritta kama. So, nirmana moha jitasanga dosha, adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama, dvandvair vimukta. So the fifth thing that Krishna mentions is one is freed from the duality of the material nature. That is the sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labha jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujasva naivam papam avapsisi. As Krishna mentions to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, that is the equanimity of the mind. Whether one is getting happiness or whether one is getting sorrow, the fluctuation is not happening. It is equanimity. The mind is peaceful, and peace is happiness. This is unfortunately in the conditioned state. Somehow one thinks that when it is peaceful, there is something wrong, because one is used to a state of total flux, and that flux becomes normality. It becomes a normal thing. So when that flux goes away, And when there is peace, one feels that one is not in the right place. But actually, being in the peaceful state of mind is our original position, original constitutional position. So this is Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Mruchati. So the real peaceful state is when one understands that Krishna is the actual enjoyer of all the sacrifices and all the penances and all the activities that one is doing. Krishna is the actual proprietor of everything. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. Krishna is the actual best friend of all the living entities. So if one knows these three things, so Nasti Buddhir Ayuktasya Nachayuktasya Bhavana, Nacha Bhavayata Shanti, Ashantasya Kuta Sukha. Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that when one is not in a one-pointed loving devotional service to the Lord, that is called Ayukta Buddhi. There is a Yukta Buddhi. Yukta is when one is totally remembering the Lord in 100% way, without remembering, without anything else. That is Yukta. But then there is Ayukta, where one's mind is just going to different places. So Krishna says that Nasti Buddhir Ayuktasya, Nachayuktasya Bhavana. So the intelligence is not constant when the mind is not fixed on the Lord. Nasti Buddhir Ayuktasya, and when the intelligent and mind is not fixed, there is no emotional involvement in the activity of loving devotional service. Nacha yuktasya bhavana, nacha bhavayata shanti. And when there is no emotional involvement in terms of remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nacha yuktasya bhavana, nacha bhavayata shanti. There is no peace. And then when there is no peace, how can there be happiness? Ashantasya kuta sukham. So this is the so when one is in this state of coming back to this verse, trayīmayo dharmamayas tapomaya. So when one is in the personified religious scripture, when one is performing austerity, whatever one is doing, if the goal is not developing attachment to hearing about the Lord, then it is just a hard labor. So this is shrama eva hi kevalam. Dharma swanushrita pumsam vishwakshena kathasuya notpadeyat ratim yadi shrama eva hi kevalam. So this is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So this is what trayīmayo dharmamayas tapomaya. So even if there is all this dharma and tapa, but if it is not helping one to get attached to hearing about the Lord, then it is just a hard labor. Then it becomes gata-vyalīkair, as it is mentioned in the next word in this verse. So one who, by those who are above pretensions. So that is the pure devotees of the Lord. They are above pretensions. Why they are above pretensions? Because they are recognizing the transcendental personality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the ye anyeva aravindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasta bhavada vishuddha buddhaya aruya krichena param padam tata patanti yada anadrita yushmadangraya. So that is the, because Srila Vyasadeva himself has said this, that he says that if someone is thinking oneself as liberated, but one has not recognized the transcendental lotus feet of the Lord, then one might do lots of austerities and reach the topmost position, but then one falls down. Why? Because one did not recognize the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is being free from gata-vyalīkair. And the next word that is mentioned is aja-śaṅkarādibhir. So that is Brahmaji and Shankara, Lord Shiva. And Srila Prabhupada mentions about the four sampradayas. The Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, and then the Kumar Sampradaya, and then Shri Sampradaya. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that that is the reason here that aja-śaṅkarādibhir. Adibhir would mean the Lakshmi ji and the Kumara Sampradaya there. So those four sampradayas are gata-vyalīkair. They are above the pretensions, because unfortunately the pretension is on the basis of understanding that we are these bodies. That is unfortunately a pretension, because the real constitutional position is that uh, everyone is part and parcel of the Lord, and everyone is eternal, and everyone is unborn. Uh, it is very difficult to understand that in the conditioned state, because in the conditioned state, the only thing that we know is the body. Uh, we see ourselves as the body, we see others as the body. So in the conditioned state, that is the only experience that we have. But when we are surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it is understood that all these external bodies are just a temporary arrangement. But the permanent situation is as an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, eternally serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whether one knows it or one does not know it, that is a different thing. But actually, one is always engaged in the loving devotional service of the Lord. That is the all the living entities. That is their existence. The whole existence is based on rendering loving devotional service. Otherwise, there is no existence. So this is the transcendental position, and that is free from all pretensions. Gata-vyalīkair. And then vitarkya-liṅgo. So this is another beautiful word that is used here in this verse. One who is observed with awe and veneration. So this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vaikuntha planets, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is observed with awe and veneration. But in Goloka Vrindavan Dham, we know, and this month of Kartik, which is ending tomorrow, is conspicuous in terms of the absence of the awe and veneration to the Lord. It is based on the loving devotional service of Yashoda-mayi in terms of controlling the Lord rather than awe and veneration. And the Lord becomes controlled. This is the transcendental position of Goloka Vrindavan Dham, where there is no awe and veneration. There is only pure love for the Lord. And in that pure love, the Lord becomes controlled. There is nothing which can control the Lord except pure love of the devotee. When there is pure love of the devotee in terms of serving the Lord becomes controlled. So this is what we were discussing. Jnane prayase udapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukhritam bhavadiyavartham sthane sthita shrutigata tanuvan manobhir ye prayase ajita jitopi asita istrilokyam. As it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that it is very difficult to understand the Lord through jnana, through the knowledge, through the medium of knowledge, udapasya. But how he can be understood? When one is humble, when one is surrendered unto the Lord. Namanta eva sthane sthita shrutigata tanuvan manobhir. And when one does not need to leave one's place, one can be situated in whatever place one is, but one has to be shrutigatan tanuvan manobhir. One has to keep hearing about the Lord through the tanuvan and manobhir, through the body, through the speech, and through the mind. Then ajita jitopi asita istrilokyam. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unconquerable. So that is the awe and veneration. That is a state of awe and veneration. Becomes conquered. Jitopi asita istrilokyam. So that, and then that is the bhagavān prasīdatām. So we started with that last two words, bhagavān prasīdatām. So that is, may that Supreme Absolute be pleased with me. That is the goal of human form of life. When one remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his pastimes, his name, and name is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Abhinnatvat Nama Namino. So, and it is Chintamani. Chintamani is the touchstone. It can give whatever one wants. So that is the wonderful names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this, it is mentioned iti Shodashaka namnam kalikalmasha nashanam nata parataropaya sarva vedeshu drishyate. So when we are chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, this what is happening is bhagavān prasīdatām. That is what is happening. The Lord becomes our original constitutional position of serving the Lord becomes totally clear, and the path becomes evident. With that, I would like to conclude this discussion. Let us see if there is. Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu Krishne Matirastu Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.